Hello and all, welcome to the latest Forever Blue podcast. My name is Ian Cheeseman. We do this on a weekly basis, and obviously it's free to subscribe, so every subscription helps. And it is all about Manchester City. It's all about English football, this particular podcast. So if you just discovered us, thank you very much. I will have with me at least two, if not three guests during the course of this podcast, and I will introduce them to you in just a second. But first of all, I just want to thank Howard Solicitors, who are based in Stockport, Ashton and Cheshire. They do all sorts of great work, and they specialise in helping people who perhaps haven't got lots of money to spend on legal advice. So feel free to contact them. howardsolicitors.com is the website. law@howardsolicitors.com is their email address. Or if you want to give them a call, 0161 872 9999. And I'm very much indebted to them for their support. Now, obviously, we're doing this podcast the day after City played Spurs in the Premier League and lost by 1-0, but also on the day that this big story is broken about the Premier League charging City with more than 100 breaches of its financial rules after a 4-year investigation. These are charges that relate to 2009 to the 2017-18 season. We can't ignore what's happened. But equally, I think it would be very unfair for us to go into lots of detail and to try to argue or discuss anyway the pros and cons of who's right and who's wrong. Now, I'm a City fan, a long-standing fan. I've been going home and away as a Blue since the 1970s. Blimey, that makes me sound so old, doesn't it? But it's true. I then became a journalist and worked for the BBC for nearly a quarter of a century, and was privileged to be able to commentate on radio on City's games, home and away in Europe, even over in Abu Dhabi. And so I've been involved as a professional journalist, but also as a self-confessed lifelong fan all my life. And so I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Blue. So obviously I want to believe and hope to believe, and actually I'm quite confident that City will prove their innocence in this. Although there is one thing I would say, that is that practically every club must try to circumnavigate as many rules as they can for competitive advantage. And there will be plenty of other clubs out there, plenty of other sporting groups or whatever you want to call them, who will also be trying everything they can to take advantage of every situation. I mean, it's like tax, isn't it? People might not break tax rules, but they'll do everything to pay as little tax as they can. And that's a different argument. And City came into being as a major club, a major force, when Sheikh Mansour took over the club and wanted to buy themselves a seat at the top table, if you like, and become, one of the big players. And clearly, if you're already one of the big players, you don't want a new boy to come in. It's like somebody winning the lottery and suddenly coming to your golf club and with jeans on and a tatty t-shirt and saying, I want to be a member. And the old members say, we can't be having people like you at our golf club. And it feels as if that's always been what it's about. The FFP by UEFA was brought in to try and stop the new boys come to the party. UEFA failed. City managed to get what was a 2-year UEFA Champions League ban thrown out. And they also, did everything they could to try to fine City, and eventually the £30 million fine was reduced to £10 million. So just to go through these things, if you're listening from somewhere in the world where you're not right across this, or maybe even you're a City fan at home who doesn't know about it, just a few other things to tell you. The club has been referred to an independent commission. It's chaired by Murray Rose and KC, who you might be interested to know is a member at Arsenal. It'll be confidential and it'll be heard in private. City have issued a statement. It says the club welcomes a review. This is part of it anyway. The club welcomes a review of this matter by an independent commission to impartially consider the comprehensive body of irrefutable evidence that exists in support of its position. As such, we look forward to this matter being put to rest once and for all. Now, anybody that's ever seen the way Khaldoon, the chairman, operates and speaks, he speaks with authority, he speaks with conviction, he speaks with confidence. He did that when the UEFA charge was made, and he was proven to be right. And CAS the Court for Sporting Arbitration overturned the initial sanctions, and I don't think that Khaldoon ever doubted that that would happen. This statement, and although I've only ever met Khaldoon briefly once, but knowing a little bit about the man and the way he carries himself, I would actually be very confident that City would win this as well. But we don't know. Now, a couple of other things I'll say to you before I bring in some guests and get their thoughts on it all, is that Simon Mullock, who is a City fan, but he's a very esteemed writer for The Mirror, said today that he's spoken to a senior person at City who says, the Premier League spent 4 years investigating, and in the end, there are mistakes that even a child wouldn't make in the report that they've issued. And it felt like they'd rushed this out to divert attention from the postponed white paper that's due out on Wednesday. Now, this is a British government white paper, which is all about when Super League happened and there was a possibility of clubs deserting the Premier League and other competitions to go and join the Super League. And there was a call for there to be a sort of an authority, if you like, to make sure that the football authorities kept their house in order. And it's thought by a lot of people that the reason for the timing of this Premier League report being in the week that this white paper is due to come out is to prove that they don't need any policing and that they can keep their own football house in order, and that maybe that's why that's been rushed through today. So those are the outline of the facts, really. You might remember it was July the 13th when the Court of Arbitration for Sport dismissed the charges against City back in 2020. Now, I've got two guests with me today at the moment. We might get joined by a third one later on. But the first guest was a man who was born in Barrington, Illinois. He's an American football player, an offensive tackle. Green Bay Packers, Los Angeles Chargers, a Super Bowl champion of Polish descent. None of this may be relevant to the conversation we're going to have, but I'm just telling you in case you don't know who he is. But most important of all these facts is that he's a City fan. That man is Brian Balaga. So, Brian, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be on. I've watched this show multiple times, so I'm finally glad that we've been able to work it out and get on the same page to do one together.
Great. If you're that confident, you like it, and you're good, we'll get you on again then.
Absolutely.
We had an astronaut on. I've become pally with Doug Hurley, one of the astronauts who went up. Who's a big City fan, and he's brilliant when I get him on. So perhaps I'll get the two of you on together sometime. I also hopefully will be joined by Mark Lillis, but he's having a few technical difficulties at the moment. So if we get him, former City striker, of course, Manchester born, proper blue as well, then we'll get his comments too. But Adam, who's part of the Forever Blue podcast team, I'm afraid I haven't got your biography in front of me, Adam, but former City Matters representative and a blue, and also an NFL fan. So you know all about Brian, don't you? So we can have a bit of a love-in later on. So you've heard my introduction. Let's get the reaction of you, Brian. I mean, I know. Well, actually, what I should do is just for the purpose of anybody listening to this, because they'll all ask the same question: how come you're a City fan? Well, how come you've ended up being a City fan, Brian?
So super random. I was back in 2012 when I first moved down here to Florida. I was rehabbing my knee after I tore an ACL, and it was a Saturday, and rehab was going good, so I was going to go play golf that morning. And got down early around 6 a.m., was making myself some food, turned on the TV, flipping through the channels, and a soccer game was on. And, you know, I was looking at the teams, and everyone knows the teams in the United States, right? They know Man United, they know Chelsea, they know Arsenal, they know Liverpool. Who was on? I believe it was City versus, I think, West Ham. And, you know, when I looked at myself and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to cheer for Man City. I go, everyone knows Man United. I go, I don't want to be the guy that cheers for Man United. I go, because I'm a middle brother, or smaller brother at the time. I'm like, I'm going to root for little brother. And it turns out little brother is big brother. Now, just like me and my brother. And that's kind of where it that's where it started for me. One random morning in Florida, about to go play golf, turn the game on, and that's how it started. Never, and from that point on, I think I tuned into just about every game I could. Sometimes I had to miss because of NFL games on Sunday. I didn't get to watch them, but any game I could tune into, I did.
And you're at the age of 33 now, if I'm not mistaken, and you're in between clubs, as it were. Is your career on hold? Are you looking for something new, or are you finished now?
Well, right now I'm more towards being finished. This was my first year not playing. I had some injuries that I was still dealing with that there would have been no way I could have got back to a team and been productive or played. I mean, it just wouldn't have worked out. So I've been rehabbing this whole year essentially, and things are feeling better. But time away from the game is time away from the game, and once you step away for a little bit and you're out for that long, it's hard to get back in and be the guy you were. So haven't made an official decision yet, but leaning more towards this being, that was, or 2 years ago would be my last year. Yeah.
So now you've got a little bit more time. I mean, do you watch City intensively? Do you follow what's happening out in the States, or
Yeah.
is it just something you dip into now and again?
Nope. Every game I watch, have all the streaming services, ESPN Plus to get the FA and League Cup games, have Paramount Plus to get the Champions League games, have Peacock when they're not on NBC, so I can watch, I could watch them on there. So I every game that I could possibly watch, I watch it. And if I can't, I'll go back and watch the replay of it before I check any of the stats of the game, just so I can watch it live. I mean, normally these days, because like I mentioned earlier before we got on, my son plays soccer, so we travel for that. If they're playing, my wife has to drive so I can watch the game, and then I have to hold the iPad in between my son and I so he can watch, because he loves Man City. It's his squad. And when we were in Green Bay for their friendly against Bayern Munich, my son was, in heaven. Got to meet Haaland and De Bruyne and Pep and all these guys, and he was just loving it. So between he and I, we don't miss a game.
So given the intensity of your support, and I can hear the passion in your voice, and you hear what's happened this morning as we're recording this, does it affect the way you view City, and what do you make of these charges? I know it's impossible to comment specifically, but what do you make on the surface?
I mean, right off the get, I don't think it impacts me at all. It doesn't impact me at all because of what you mentioned earlier. As my first time going through it, with seeing what happened with UEFA a few years back and reading everything that was going on, what the accusations were, what the charges were. And then, like you said, pretty much was dismissed. I think the fine ended up being for not complying completely with UEFA. I think that was the fine. There was no wrongdoing. I think it was they weren't completely compliant with the investigation. Okay.
Which ironically is one of the charges now, isn't it, of the new one?
Yes, exactly. That's one of the charges right now. And of course, so it doesn't impact my support on them. I'm with you. I think the club is confident. I think the statement they made, they're very confident. I think as a fan base, we should be confident. We have no reason to believe otherwise, why we shouldn't be confident. I think the club has done good business. I think it's run properly. And with that being said, everyone's going to say we're guilty before anything even comes out. So as Man City fans, we just have to accept that. That's the way we're going to get treated. I mean, I don't know how many people tweeted at me today, like, thanks for giving us Foden for 30 million next year. We appreciate it because you're going to be out of the league and things like that. I'm just saying, like, this is like incredible to me. I'm like, this is literally incredible that we're, as City fans, we're guilty just because you want us to be, not because we are. So to me, it makes me support the club even more. It makes me support the club even more. Cheer them on even harder, even though I'm in the States, I'm not at the stadium, and just support the team, the club, the players even more, because that's what it needs right now.
That's great to hear. I mean, I hope that's the sort of overall reaction that fans all around the world, and even the Mancunian fans nearby as well, that they see that this is an opportunity to sort of rally around the club even more, with it being under siege. Adam, obviously you're a former City Matters committee. You've been in contact with the club. I don't mean on this particular subject, but you've seen how they operate, and you're a lifelong fan. I know how passionate you are. What's your reaction? Is it as positive as Brian's? And just be honest, give us an honest reaction, because I've seen lots of negativity today from City fans who are feeling very down and sort of saying, this feels like, I've had people literally send me messages saying, this feels like the end. This could be the end for us.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty down this morning when I first heard it, but throughout the day, it sort of sunk in a little bit. And I sort of go along with the point you made before, which is when this first broke about 4 years ago, I was a City Matters rep at that time, and I asked Omar Barada face to face,
the chief operating officer, by the way.
Yeah, at the time of the club, and I asked him, what should we, as reps, what should we say to people who were asking about it? And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, tell them to have faith. We will not be punished because we have done nothing wrong. It was his categorical answer. Now, who knows whether that's true or not? I'm choose to believe, until I've got any reason not to, I'm choosing to believe that what he says is correct. It's clear to me that, as you were saying before, that every team is trying to maximize their own advantage in whatever way they can, and that this driving force behind this constant attempt to charge us is coming from the other clubs who want to try and take us out of the reckoning. So as things stand, and who knows how long it's going to take, but as things stand, I'm going to just say, well, we're innocent until proven guilty. Omar Barada is absolutely adamant that we've done nothing wrong. So I'll go with that until I hear otherwise. If it does turn out that we've done something wrong, then we can have a conversation at that point, I guess, because that would be serious in terms of those individuals at the club. But, we know that Pep has said that if he feels he's lied to, he'd leave. But let's just assume that what you've heard, from Khaldun, and what I've heard from Omar is the truth, and that we haven't done anything wrong.
Dr. Gary James, who I respect very, very highly, who is more or less the official historian of the club, but somebody who's very well connected, said today, and I must say I do 100% agree with him. It's rarely I would ever disagree with him, but he said, if City are found guilty, then whatever punishment is coming, they fully deserve. And even as a fan, even though as a fan you're not supposed to ever find fault with your club, you have to be able to step back sometimes and go, well, you know what, if they've done something wrong, then you take the punishment and you come back. And it's happened to other clubs. You've seen clubs like Juventus and Rangers, Derby County, deducted points or relegated or whatever. And generally speaking, if that does happen, then they come back. I mean, I'm still of the opinion that the people at City have got running this club know what they're doing. And that statement was very bullish and right in people's faces. There was no holding back from it, really, Brian, was there? And you do get a sense from that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking no further than a few years ago. I mean, it's, if we're looking at the charges, and I can't say I'm an expert on what all these little rules are and think, like I don't know what that is, but I would take a guess that a lot of these same charges are the same charges that UEFA was trying to bring against them a few years ago. It has to be, because these investigations mixed very, their timelines were very similar. Obviously, UEFA brought theirs earlier, it got dismissed, and now the Premier League's a few years later. So the charges are probably pretty similar. So I'm not sure what was found by the Premier League that here we are now, a few years later, and they got dismissed there, but we're going to bring these to a head, and now we're going to try to prove our point. It confuses me. I'm not sure. I thought you mentioned that there was going to be a Arsenal club member as one of the.
He's the leader of the commission. He's a QC.
Yeah, that's
KC.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I'm not sure how you could put people with affiliations like that on a supposed to be a very neutral committee to hear these things. I'm not sure how that makes any sense to me, but it is what it is. But I feel like the club feels good about where they're at, what they've done. And again, as a fan, I look at this and I feel like, and I can't, there's been obviously yourself and a lot of other people have been a City fan much longer than I have. I look at this as us against the world mentality. That's what it is, because everybody doesn't want us. Nobody wants this outcome to be good for us. They want it to be negative for us. So as City fans, it's us versus everybody. And I think that's the way you got to look at it. As Adam said, listen, if it is found that we did break rules, punishment, we get it. It's coming. And what that'll be, I don't know, but we have to accept that. But I'm still in the camp that I think this is going to go just like it did with UEFA, and that'll be settled. How long it'll take, no idea. But that's just my opinion.
Brian, you've been a fantastic guest tonight. We've got to get you on again, that's for sure, if you're up for it.
I am, yeah.
What you've definitely been is you've been very positive in the way that you reacted to the accusations that have been thrown at City today and the situation that they find themselves in, i.e. having lost at Spurs. So I wonder where you stand at the moment. Are you full of optimism in regard to both things, really? Because when you woke up this morning, I guess, and you knew you were coming on the podcast, and you look at the story that breaks and you think, oh, why has this happened? But here we are now. We're a few hours later. We've all had time to digest it. So we've had that. We've had the defeat at Spurs, but the emotion of the moment's gone. Where are you right now?
Yeah, I'm confident. I'm full of optimism and positivity. I think as the season goes on, I mean, Mark's been saying it, and he's played the game, and he's played it at a very high level. That these things take time, and it takes time for guys to get in a rhythm with new players and things like that. And I think that's overshadowed because of how many goals Haaland has scored and Alvarez has looked bright, but it takes time for that team to start clicking. And I think we're going to see that as that gets going. Is it going to happen against Villa? No idea. Is it going to happen against Arsenal? I don't know. But I do think it's going to happen sometime this season. And Adam said it. Yeah, I hope it's not too late that we see that team click and it's beautiful football again. And, unfortunately, there's just not enough games. I hope it's before that. But I think we're going to be in a good position as this season goes on. The FA Cup, I think the league, we're going to be right there with Arsenal. I don't see us falling behind United or back to fourth. I just don't see that happening. And then the Champions League is a whole different competition. They're one-off matches, essentially. There's two of them, I get it, but they're one-off matches, and anything can happen. I mean, Haaland can go play this weekend or whenever they play Leipzig and score 5 goals, and that's pretty much the end of that, aggregate game, those 2 games. So I don't really look at this as a doom and gloom. I'm positive about it, and I think I think good things are coming City's way the rest of the season. I really do.